First off, I want to tell you all congrats, because it's no small feat to get through an entire year of hiring. So take a moment to think about all the job descriptions you expertly drafted, all the candidate applications you sifted through, all the interviews you scheduled and conducted, all the feedback you provided and reviews you collected, and finally, all the new all-star hires you added to your team. Add all that up, and it's a lot of data. Time to file things away and get your account ready for a new year. And I'm going to help. Here's how. First, we're going to talk about decisioning all of your candidates. And then we're going to go over making sure all your openings are in the correct status, including archiving those that you've hired for and are completely done with for the year. Let's start with candidates. Hopefully, you've been decisioning all of your candidates as you've reviewed their applications. All candidates should be in one of the following states: marked as hired or rejected, placed on hold, noted as either withdrawn or declined offer, marked as spam, archived, or kept as in process. We'll go over each one of these now as a quick refresher. First, let's talk about those marked as hired or rejected. These candidates have gone as far as they can in the hiring process, ultimately getting hired or rejected. You should mark candidates as one of these the moment you make a decision on them to ensure accurate reporting, particularly for the time to hire report. Now, if you've only been marking candidates as hired and not marking the others as rejected, now would be a good time to start. Think of it as training yourself to do this moving forward in the new year. Next, we have candidates placed on hold. These candidates are currently in process, but you can't take them further for any number of reasons. For example, maybe your team has a hiring freeze, or the candidate isn't available to start for a while, but you're still interested in them and thus don't want to mark them as rejected. In cases like this, placing them on hold will remove them from your active hiring pipeline view, and they'll return to the pipeline based on a date of your choosing. Moving on, we have withdrawn or declined offer. Like hired or rejected candidates, these candidates have also gone as far as they can in the hiring process, but weren't hired or rejected. Either they've chosen to withdraw themselves from candidacy, or you actually offered them the position and they declined it. Like with hired or rejected, we recommend you mark candidates as one of these at the moment you make that decision for reporting purposes. Now, we also have an option for candidates you aren't actively reviewing. Mark candidates as spam if they aren't real candidates, like maybe someone sent a blank resume, or perhaps they've applied repeatedly to your company and can't take a hint. Mark these candidates as spam to auto-hide future notifications from their profiles, including new incoming messages. That way, you can focus on real candidates. Lastly, archived. Archived candidates are hidden from your active hiring pipeline view without an ultimate decision. While we strongly recommend you choose one of the previous statuses for every candidate, you may want to bulk archive candidates in some cases. For example, if you brought candidates into the system for historical purposes. I also want to note that just because December 31st hits doesn't mean that you had to have gone through all of your candidates and made a decision on them. If you're still actively hiring for an opening, keep candidates as in process while you continue to review their applications. Candidates who aren't in any of the previously named statuses are considered in process by default. On their profile, you'll see that they're still actively going through stages, like this image on the right. Next, let's clean up your existing openings. All openings should be in one of the following states: published, internal only, stop accepting candidates, or archived. I'll go over each one of these here too. Starting with published. If you're actively hiring for an opening, leave your opening as published, then it's business as usual. This will keep the opening visible on your hosted site, careers widget, and any job boards you've placed it on. There's also the internal only status. If you're looking to fill an opening with someone already at your company, or perhaps through a referral, move your opening to unpublished and use internally to process internal candidates. This hides the job from anywhere public. Then you can either upload a candidate's resume manually or send someone an application link directly. Next is the stop accepting candidate status. If you've received enough candidates and want to hit pause on new applications, move your opening to stop accepting candidates. This removes the job from anywhere public to give you time to process existing candidates. To start accepting applications again, simply move the status back to published. Finally, if you've marked your dream candidate as hired and aren't looking for any more hires, then yay! Archive your opening to file it away ahead of the new year. Okay, now that you've got all your data in order, let's see how your team did this year. What areas did they rock at? Where can your team improve? What's working and what's not? Right now, I'm going to focus on a few key reports that I believe will provide some great year-end insights. These reports are candidate sources, or what worked for me, coordinator activity, or who did what, stage movement, or where can I improve, rejections, why didn't candidates work out, and finally the candidates report, which can actually answer a lot of questions. Let's start with the source report. The source report tracks where all your candidates are coming from. At a glance, see what links are garnering the most candidates and whether they're getting hired or rejected. This is actually my favorite report because I find it really interesting to see where candidates are or aren't coming from. Like, sometimes we'll post a job on a site that we're sure we're going to get great candidates from, but then we look at this report and it turns out we got a bunch of duds from there. I recommend filtering your source report by January 1st to December 31st of this year to see this year's top sources for quality candidates across your entire account or even by opening. And this can vary from year to year. An action item at the end of the year would be to put together a list of sources you want to focus on in the new year and be ready to stop posting to sites that don't produce hires, even if you've always posted there. I also want to go over the coordinator activity report. This report helps you monitor and compare the work and workload contributed by your stage coordinators. At a glance, see who's doing what and how much, such as how many candidates they've each screened, how many reviews they've initiated and interviews scheduled, how many candidates they've marked as hired, and how many candidates they manually added, if that's something your team does. Use the data in your coordinator activity report to understand who on your team contributed the most this year. An action item here is to review this report and use the numbers to set expectations for next year. You can also use this data to reward your team. For example, if you're looking to promote team members or give year-end bonuses, this report can give you insight into who's gone above and beyond. Now, if you're looking to gauge the efficiency of your openings, check out the stage movement report. This report tells you how fast candidates are moving through stages. At a glance, see the average time in days that candidates are in each stage of each opening. Use the data in this report to identify any bottlenecks in your hiring workflow and help improve the hiring experience for both your team and candidates. An action item here would be to review the stages that candidates are getting stuck in or are spending the longest period of time in, and come up with a plan to make these stages more efficient. Ask yourself, what's causing the blockage? Is it a coordinator issue? Like, is the person you've put in charge not the right person to be managing this particular stage? Or is it the nature of the stage and its requirements? That is, are you requiring too much to be done in a single stage that maybe you should break up into a few different stages? Maybe it's a combination of both. Maybe the stage has a lot of little tasks and is a bit much for any one person. Another report to review is your rejections report. This report helps you understand why candidates aren't getting hired. At a glance, see the individual reasons why candidates in specific openings were rejected, along with percentages. Use the data in this report to understand why you've been rejecting candidates and then refine your hiring processes to help minimize ineligible candidates. One action item here is to plan to emphasize requirements in next year's batch of job descriptions, along with adding gatekeeper questions to your application forms. For example, if your rejections report shows that a lot of candidates are rejected because their salary expectations are too high, maybe you want to start adding salary range in your job descriptions in the new year, as well as asking candidates right off the bat for their salary expectations when they apply. Now, lastly, I want to mention your candidates report. The candidates report is an exportable spreadsheet of all of your candidate application data for a certain period of time. If your team has a policy of deleting data from the system after a period of time, we recommend downloading a copy of this report to save your candidate data and store it offline. To get to this report, go to Reports, Excel Reports, Candidate Report based on added date. Now, be sure to choose this candidate's report and not the one that says based on last updated date, so that you'll receive the candidates that actually applied during 2018. Also, be sure to select the correct date range to encompass the entire year's candidates. Your action item here is to open the report in Excel. You'll be able to sort and organize the data in countless ways based on the column titles. Review the data and look for trends specific to your own hiring. You may be surprised at what you find. All right, so to wrap things up, I thought I'd go over a few settings that we recommend you review and edit as needed. These include email notifications, calendar sync, user access, and team-created content and customizations. First up, email notifications. So have you been getting the email notifications you need, or have you been getting notified all year of items that aren't that important to you? Maybe your team roster changes a lot, and we've been sending you an email every time a user is deleted from your account. And well, that's not something you need to be notified of. Well, you can just go to your user list and see the changes for yourself whenever you want. How about you turn off that notification then? Basically, now's a great time to review your email notification preferences and make changes. Okay, how about calendar sync? Has your team been managing calendars manually? Have you been messaging colleagues asking them when they're free to take an interview with lots of back and forth? Ouch. Initiate a team-wide calendar sync to start the new year off with in-app visibility of your team's availability. Once your team's calendars are synced, you'll be able to see when your interviewers are free, right when you're scheduling interviews. So you can pick a time when everyone's free without having to coordinate via email, DM, text, or getting up and walking over to someone's office on another floor. Man, do people still do that? All right, next up, let's talk about user access. Have some team members moved on, or have you moved on from some recruiting agencies? If so, be sure to deactivate their access. You should be doing this the moment someone stops working for you, but now's also a good time to do it. This can be done by super admin users from two different places under settings. First, if you go to settings, then users, you'll be able to see a list of all your active team members. These are the users who have valid logins to your account. Make sure these are all current employees. And if you come across one that isn't, click deactivate next to their name. Their logins will become invalid, and if by chance they still are logged in, they'll be immediately logged out. Next, if you need to remove some external recruiting agencies, go to Settings, then Recruiting Agencies, and you'll see a list of active agencies. Simply click on one, and you'll have an option to deactivate them. In either case, you can always reactivate a login. This is helpful if you decide to start working with an agency again, or if a seasonal or contracted employee gets hired again. Lastly, I want to talk about all your team-created content and customizations. So throughout the year, individual team members may have been adding content to customize their Recruiterbox experience. And oftentimes, people add content and don't look at the content others have added. Over time, you may end up with a lot of stuff, and maybe even duplicates. End of the year is a good time to go through this content and clean things up. That means deleting items your team isn't using, including test or draft items, and consolidating duplicates. This applies to a number of areas under settings, including but not limited to email templates, questionnaires, reasons for reject and other decision states, custom fields on openings, and candidate labels. I'd recommend going through each of these and any other settings that your team may customize, and make sure that 2019 starts off with only the templates, custom fields, labels, etc. that are still relevant. Okay, so just to recap, today we went over cleaning up your account data, including decisioning candidates and archiving openings, looking at year-end metrics via reports, and reviewing account settings, including personal and team-wide settings.